Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The Windsor Jewish Federation is criticizing a pro-Palestinian rally for protesting in what the Federation says is a Jewish neighborhood. Rally organizers saying tonight they weren't aware. Plus, two Leamington migrant workers are hoping to change regulations around employment insurance. They're the plaintiffs in a $500 million class action lawsuit. And mustard and pickles, a good snack at a barbecue, but those condiments have also found their way onto the Spitfires hockey bench. We tell you why. The Windsor Jewish Federation is taking offense to a pro-Palestinian march that entered what it's saying is a Jewish neighborhood. But an organizer of the protest says it was unaware such an area exists. The CBC's Dalton Chen has more.
Hebrew Heights. That's how the executive director of the Windsor Jewish Federation describes this neighborhood, Victoria Boulevard. According to the Federation, this South Windsor area has traditionally been home to many members of the local Jewish community, currently 40 to 50 households. And it's where hundreds of pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched on December 31st, chanting anti-Israel slogans. The Federation claims it was deliberate intimidation.
I can say that many members of our Jewish community felt unsafe and felt targeted because that area has historically been known as a Jewish area. It is symbolic of Jewish Windsor.
But the organizers of the march, Windsor for Palestine, say they weren't aware of the area's Jewish ties. The route was shared with Windsor police ahead of time, and Windsor police vehicles escorted the protesters. According to Windsor for Palestine, the only reason the protesters entered Victoria Boulevard was so that they could turn back onto their main route, Dougal Avenue.
We were not choosing that route specifically to target the Jewish community. We actually had no idea they were residing there. We had no idea whatsoever. And it's not only me, many members that actually lived and grew up in Windsor had no idea.
It's true the area has grown in diversity over the years. This popular Arabic eatery, Hamoudi's Shawarma, is only a block away from Victoria Boulevard. But some Jewish homeowners don't take any comfort from Windsor for Palestine's response. They're worried the march sets a precedent, resembling pro-Palestinian protests in Jewish residential areas in Toronto.
It made me feel intimidated. There was no reason for them to come into this neighborhood. This is a neighborhood where there's no visual from a main street, mostly dead ends. There was no reason to come into this neighborhood. Other than for the main purpose of intimidating the Jewish homeowners in this area.
The Windsor Jewish Federation has asked to meet with Windsor police on this issue. Windsor for Palestine say they'll continue demonstrating across the city in the name of human rights. Dalton Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
A 45-year-old Windsor man has been arrested a second time in connection to a sexual assault of a 15-year-old girl. Police say the two met on social media and they entered a sexual relationship for just over a month. On December 27th, police arrested the man at a home on East Court Drive and charged him with 7 offenses, including sexual assault and forcible confinement. He was released on bail and told not to contact the victim. Police said that he did. They arrested and charged him again yesterday. He's facing an additional 8 charges, including sexual interference, possession of child pornography, and breaching bail conditions. Emotions are still running high 4 years after Iran shot down a Ukrainian passenger jet, killing all 176 people on board. 5 of them are members of the University of Windsor community. Professor Lisa Porter knew 2 of the victims.
When it first happened, it was, I would say surreal, and just to imagine that something like this could actually happen. And 4 years later, I think I still don't believe it, just so much potential, so many promising people. Many of them were students coming back to university, etc. And just a totally senseless tragedy.
Porter attended a tearful memorial ceremony yesterday at the University of Windsor on the day of the anniversary. Mourners also signed a book of remembrances. The governments of Canada, Ukraine, Sweden, and the United Kingdom initiated dispute proceedings against Iran before the International Civil Aviation Organization Council yesterday. Canada and its international partners want the ICAO Council to rule that Iran breached its obligations under the Chicago Convention. That's the international agreement laying out the core rules and standards for safe global air travel. Porter says she welcomes anything Canada can do to get justice for the victims. The City of Windsor released its draft budget yesterday, and tomorrow the County of Essex will debate their $134 million proposed budget. The CBC's TJ Deer has taken a look at the documents. He joins us now live in studio to talk about it. TJ, what should people know about this year's budget?
Well, Meg, this year's budget is shaping up to be about $10 million more than last year's budget. A quarter of it will be spent on infrastructure projects such as roadway expansion, transportation services, and maintenance. But a further $1.1 million will be spent on improving the county's emergency services. That $1.1 million will be spent on an additional ambulance that's been added to the county fleet, as well as paying for 24 more full-time paramedics to address the code reds, which are when there are fewer than 2 ambulances available, but also code blacks, and that's when there are no ambulances available and people often have to wait for a long time to get one. Now, this year's budget would raise taxes by about 6%, and for a house valued at $100,000, that would be another $31.60 a year.
6% is 2 more than Windsor's proposed tax hike. What does the mayor say about that?
Well, yeah, I spoke with Amherstburg Mayor Michael Proulx about it, and he wasn't exactly thrilled. I mean, he said people would be able to understand a 4% increase, but wondered if anything above that is even necessary. Proulx says the county has millions of dollars in reserve, but it's not touching it. He also told me that the province shares some of the blame.
A lot of the problem that municipalities have is not with how we're spending our money, but the fact that the province who used to give us money to do things has stopped doing it. And so we're having to make it up by increasing taxes. So everybody looks at us and yells at us, you're increasing my taxes. But they don't yell at the province for having cut the money back to the municipality to make the municipality do that in the first place.
Now, detailed lines in the draft budget show the county is forecasting to receive almost $37 million in net funding from the province, most of which will go to Essex Windsor EMS. Now, that amount is less than last year. CBC News is seeking comment from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Now, Proulx says he plans to bring that issue of not dipping into the reserves and the lack of funding by the province during budget deliberations. Those begin tomorrow at 4 p.m.
Well, thanks so much for that, TJ. That's the CBC's TJ Deer. 2 migrant workers from Leamington are lead plaintiffs in a proposed $500 million class action lawsuit against the federal government. Migrant agricultural workers in Canada pay into employment insurance, but they aren't able to access it when their contract expires and they're mandated to return to their home country. A lawyer with Goldblatt Partners, the law firm that filed the statement of claim, says the lawsuit is aimed at challenging those regulations.
Paid into it. It's a basic concept of if you pay for a service, you get it. They have no choice but to pay into the system, and they have no choice but to leave Canada. So all of their choices is taken away from this. And the whole thing is, if we want workers to continue to come here and work, we should allow them to access a benefits program, which they're denied access to through no fault of their own. It's just the end of the seasonal work program. And there are other seasonal work programs we have where we recognize that, you can't fish all year round. You can't necessarily do forestry all year round. And I guess take this analogy. If you imagine that it was a Canadian resident worker picking tomatoes or picking apples and winter rolls around, they're out of work, they could access EI. But you have a worker beside them doing the exact same job who, through the program, is sent out of the country who can't. And it's a fundamental unfairness.
Class action lawsuits have to be certified by a judge in order to proceed. The lawyer says that will take place in about a year and a half. Now, in a statement to CBC Windsor, Canada's Attorney General said a statement of defense has not been filed yet and said it does not comment on cases currently before the courts, also stating the government of Canada takes its responsibilities with respect to the protection of temporary foreign workers very seriously, and the safety and protections of workers is paramount. Well, you might be used to seeing Pickles and Mustard at the arena, when you buy a hot dog, but another place you'll see them is on the Windsor Spitfires bench. For 2 former players, the salty substances allow them to hit peak performance. The CBC's Jason Vio explains the game time tradition.
I think any normal fan or person would just kind of be like, this guy's crazy, just putting mustard in his mouth. For defenseman Roberto Mancini, his passion for mustard started 4 years ago while playing in the Ontario Hockey League. At first, he was discreet about it, just using the packets you'd find at the arena concession stand. Now, the self-proclaimed mustard guy has no shame in getting it right from the big bottle in full view of fans.
It looks kind of like you're enjoying it a bit.
Yeah, I actually wasn't the biggest mustard fan, and then I kind of started falling in love with it a couple years ago, and now I just kind of went with it.
It's even become a superstition, and you'll notice Mancini taking a swig of mustard at specific times during the game.
No, it's definitely not the best tasting thing ever, but you kind of get used to it. I just find like it helps my legs. Like my legs will feel a bit heavy after the first period, just kind of getting into the game, and I'll kind of just like relieve all the tension and the heaviness.
And if you pay close attention to the bench, you may also notice a jar of pickles sitting around. Forward Oliver Peer says the salty and vinegary condiment is the only thing that relieves his muscle cramps.
I was willing to try anything. I mean, I drank in soy sauce, mustard, pickle juice now. The soy sauce didn't sit well in my stomach. Had some problems late night.
It works so well, he goes through 2 jars of Bick's tangy dill-sliced pickles per game. He sips every last drop, but the pickles are now a team tradition.
I go around the room handing out pickles. Guys ask me for pickles and give them a couple pickles. So, you know, it's something for me and the team. So.
As for why these strange habits relieve muscle cramps, it's a bit of a mystery for the team's physiotherapist.
A couple theories are like it's the high sodium content in the pickle juice. Electrolytes, all that being kind of replenished in the muscles, which kind of staves off the cramping.
The mustard pickle bromance was thought to be over after Mancini was traded to the Flint Firebirds on Monday. However, Tuesday morning, Peer has also been swapped to the same team, reuniting the 2 players with quirky habits. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
A new year often means new goals. For some, they set their sights on books, reading more before the year ends. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa spoke with some local bookworms to see how they stay motivated throughout the year.
Reading goals, do you set them? And if so, what is your reading goal for this year?
Every year I set a reading goal. 2 years ago, my reading goal was a little bit ridiculous. I decided I wanted to read 365 books a year, a book a day. I made it to 363 because I took 2 days off for Christmas and New Year's.
For me, I think I only put 20 because I wanted to know for sure that I will achieve the goal for sure. I know I can do 20 books, although I'm for sure going to do more than that.
How do you stay motivated in reading so frequently?
Good question. I've never thought about it. I just love to read, so I'm not interested in technology. So I'm one of those relics, I guess, that should have been born 100 years ago.
Should you set a reading goal at the start of the year?
I think that really depends on the person. For some people, they get so fixated on the number, they forget the point of reading, which is, you know, joy and learning and seeing the world through a different perspective, the perspective of the author or authors rather than your own. The problem with the reading goals for some is, you know, you read 30 books last year. This year I'm going to read 40. And maybe 30 was like the perfect number of books for you, and 40 is a stretch. So you start reading shorter books, you start skimming, you start giving up on books you're actually really enjoying because you're like, oh, this one is taking me too long. And if you're limiting what you read because of your reading goal, that's where I think it becomes, you know, not ideal. But if it's like getting you, like, I love reading goals, like I'll hear people say they want to read the rainbow. They want to read people from different backgrounds. They want to read people with different, you know, orientations and family structures. They want to read books set in different parts of the world, or even they just want to read different genres. You know, reading is supposed to be a joy, and I hate it when people have so many rules around reading that they rob themselves of the joy that books can bring.
If you buy a new vehicle today, it comes equipped with satellite technology, 360-degree cameras, park assist, Wi-Fi capability. The list goes on and on. Well, in 1983, the Lincoln Continental Concept 100 was unveiled at the Detroit Auto Show, described at the time as coming equipped with futuristic technology. This week's Rose City Rewind done by former CBC reporter Ron Lindsay.
Ford research people are banking on the lust for computerized video gadgetry as they shift their marketing strategy for the remainder of the 80s. The Continental 100, a concept of the not-too-distant future, offers a video display of all kinds of information about the car and its travels. There's satellite navigation, distance to destination, a graphic warning system, called up by a touch of the screen. You'll even be able to give the car verbal commands after it gets used to your voice. And for passengers, how about a video game in the back seat? Ford President Donald Peterson acknowledges the company wants to sell more of the fun of driving.
We obviously have to keep a very aggressive fuel efficiency, fuel economy effort going, but what we've tried to do is make a major rebalance and get ourselves back in tune with what people are telling us they want.
For the fuel economy part of that balance, Ford has developed the Probe 4, which is supposed to have the aerodynamic efficiency of a jet fighter plane. The reduction of resistance to the wind of the Probe 4 gives it 20% better fuel economy than a typical passenger car. The Ford executives say the dreams of their engineers may become the dreams of car buyers. Some of the design features from both concept cars will be available on the next line of production cars that Ford puts out. Ron Lindsay, CBC News, Dearborn.
2023 was the hottest year on record. We bring you details on that as well as your weather forecast coming up. After a year of extreme weather events, a report by Europe's Climate Change Service confirms it. 2023 was officially the planet's hottest year on record. Temperatures were above average for 11 months, and this past September was the warmest September ever. Senior science reporter Nicole Mortellero has the details.
After a year of record-breaking wildfires across the country, the warmest summer globally, and heat waves and droughts, it may not come as a surprise that 2023 was the hottest year on record. How hot? Very hot. According to the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service, 2023 was 1.48 degrees Celsius warmer than the pre-industrial average, blowing away the previous record of 1.25 degrees Celsius set in 2016.
I think it's fair to say it surprised all climate scientists, the sheer number of records that were broken and how they were broken. They were broken by very large amounts.
For the first time on record, every day of the year was 1 degree Celsius above the pre-industrial average, and half of those were more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above. Climate scientists say there were contributing factors as to why there was such a rapid rise. First and foremost, the continued use of fossil fuels, pumping CO2 into our atmosphere, and record-breaking ocean temperatures. 2023 also saw an El Niño, a natural and cyclical Pacific Ocean phenomenon, which also helped to bump temperatures slightly upward. But typically, those effects are felt in the subsequent year, which means 2024 could end up being warmer than 2023.
And the reality is, when we look back at 2023 in 5 or 10 years' time, it's likely to be one of the coolest years of that period. So the reality is, it doesn't matter if it's just below or just above 1.5 degrees. What matters is that we get that political action and rapid climate action to get to net zero as quickly as possible.
Nicole Mortellero, CBC News, Toronto.
Josiah, that warmer summers and milder winter patterns seems to have been what we've seen so far. And I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind some warmer winters. But I mean, it could have serious implications for our ecosystems.
Yeah, absolutely, Meg. And as they mentioned in that clip, this is an El Nino year, which is a natural process. But that climate change will impact things like farming and drought. And that's something definitely that we'll be keeping an eye on as we move forward. And it does look like things are taking a bit of a cooler turn now, though, which is good for us here in Windsor. If you remember from yesterday, we're at the beginning of that rain and snow sandwich right now. And today was a wet one. We're sitting at around 4 degrees right now, which is pretty high temperature, but that will drop to an overnight low of 1. And that precipitation we saw all day is continuing tonight. But we're seeing that turn into snow as we head into tomorrow. And we are keeping an eye on some frigid temperatures as we work our way toward the weekend. Let's take a look at our 5-day forecast. Tomorrow, we have a 60% chance of flurries during the day with a high of 3. Thursday, that 60% chance of flurries continues with a high of 1. And by Friday, Meg, that snow takes a bit of a break, but we're still under cloud cover with a high of 1 throughout the day. And here's that shift. Saturday, the high is -2 with snow throughout the day, and that temperature continues to drop with an overnight low of -9 on Saturday, turning into Sunday's high of -7. So that will be a chilly one. And Meg, there is a rainfall warning still in effect right now, according to Environment Canada. Some of that precipitation we've seen throughout the day is snow turning to rain, and that rain is harder to absorb with a colder ground. So there is potential for ponding on the roads. They're asking to keep children and pets away from creeks and riverbanks as we head into the evening.
It really has rained all day.
It has, yep, quite a lot of millimeters of rain.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Keep an eye out for that.
It feels that way. Every time I go outside, it's almost, I can't believe it's still going.
Totally.
Well, thanks so much for that, Josiah. There's been a technical problem on the privately led U.S. moon mission. We have the details coming up. Engineers are trying to fix a big issue that developed with the latest U.S. moon mission just hours after liftoff.
And liftoff of the first United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket, launching a new era in spaceflight to the moon and beyond.
The problem started about 7 hours after the pre-dawn launch from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The lunar lander failed to orient its solar panel correctly for its long and roundabout trip. If the issue isn't resolved, it threatens the mission for a soft landing of the spacecraft on the moon. Astrobotic Technology is hoping to be the first private company to do just that. If successful, it will be the first U.S. moon landing mission in more than 50 years. Fans of blockbuster hit series The Crown can now get their hands on some of the show's most iconic props. The production company behind the award-winning show is auctioning off costumes, cars, and dozens of other set pieces.
We have amazing pieces from all of the key actors and actresses, but some of the ball gowns are incredible.
The money is going towards a new scholarship for film students. Diana's so-called revenge dress is expected to go for more than $20,000 Canadian. Her green 1987 XJS Jaguar will also go under the hammer. But the real big ticket item is the world's only Gold State coach replica. Seen in seasons 3 and 6, that's expected to net up to $85,000. Pretty lofty price, but you'll save on gas. You'll just need an entire team of horses to pull it. The auction runs from January 11th to February 8th. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.